Great, so you have here a 1978 PedalPower ElectroPed. Old electric bike. Really odd little thing. One may even go as far as to say goofy. It's a German Keynest folding bike, 16-inch. Really fat tires for such a small wheel size. Guess they, even back then, fat tires were the e-bike thing. Made in New Jersey, at least the motor system, which is kind of Solex style. Just has a little roller under there. Presses down on the tire whenever you pull this lever here. Kind of an interesting mechanism on that. It uses the cable housing to pull the motor down instead of the cable itself. Front drum brake, pretty decent compared to the rim brakes that would have been on the original bike frame. Just a coaster brake, dual speed rear hub made by Sox and Fichtel. Or is it Fichtel and Sox? I don't know. Anyway, it's a kickback. There's one speed. There would be the other speed. Really quite a fun little thing. It's geared well for the speed that it gets to, which is probably about 15 miles an hour. The basket's not original. I added that because there's no storage. Tail light. Honestly, a feature that I wish more electric bikes these days had, though sometimes doesn't want to work very well. So, previous owner put this LED headlight in, but it looks original enough, so I think it is okay. Anyway, about the history with these things. Like I said, motor system was in New Jersey, made by a company called PedalPower. This was a branch of the General Engines company that I'm not entirely sure what they manufactured prior, but this ended up being the main subsidiary eventually. We'll get into that. But 1973, of course, there was the oil crisis, and Michael Flowers, the son of the CEO of General Engines, decided that he wanted to make an electric bike, since his logic being a bike is the cheapest form of transportation, so a motorized bike would be the cheapest form of motorized transportation. And, you know, with the gas crisis, an electric bike conversion sounded like a great idea. Which, you know, it does on paper. But the battery technology really was holding it back. So this motor system with this roller on an electric motor, friction drive, maybe Solex style as you could call it, was sold individually by PedalPower since 1974, and it could be mounted on a whole bunch of different bike frames. They show it on folding bikes, tricycles, well, adult trikes, even like normal full-size bikes. And they had a 1/2 horsepower and 1 horsepower version. This would be the 1 horsepower. So after a while of selling these things, that I guess Michael Flowers and a few other people from PedalPower were at an international bicycle show and saw this frame made by Keynest. I think I said that, sorry. Steel frame, rear suspension. Really pretty interesting to have rear suspension on a bike this old. Thing's built like an absolute tank. I mean, I have another 20-inch folding bike, probably of the same era. It's just like night and day how stiff the frames are. I mean, you can see this is like probably 1.5-inch thick down tube there and seat post or seat tube. It's not really I shouldn't say a folding bike since it detaches completely. You can undo that knob there and pull the front half of the bike off. Really pretty convenient. But anyway, they found this bike frame. They thought it looked cool, so they made an importation deal with Keynest to import the frames to the United States and convert them into these so-called ElectroPeds. A number of modifications were made to the frames, or at least some changes, maybe not modifications. The frame itself is pretty similar. They changed out the rim brake in the front for a hub brake. They put these really wide, almost moped tires on it, wheels and tires. The rims themselves supposedly are DOT approved because at the time, you know, there were no electric bike laws, and so they were concerned about the legality and certification of a motorized bike. Since mopeds having to go under self-certification by the company, I don't think it ended up being that way for these, because the rims are the only DOT components I could find other than the taillight. Anyway, they continued selling these frames, or selling these frames with these kits attached to them between 1977 and 1978. Then they started having trouble importing the frames from West Germany, and they decided to switch over to an American-built frame made by TrailerMate. Of course, TrailerMate, they're known for making trikes. They still make them today. But they had a 20-inch steel bike frame that they mounted the kit to. It seems like that's the more common version, and that ran, I believe, there aren't really any hard dates on these things that I could find, but between 1979 and 1981, after which they made a powered wheelchair, tricycle almost. Basically like an adult trike, but instead of having pedals, it just had floorboards. They called that the cycle chair. That's ended up selling really well, and they kind of transitioned their business after that point towards electric mobility for the disabled. Of course, then PedalPower rebranded as Electric Mobility Limited, and they produced the Rascal mobility scooter of Seinfeld fame. After which point, they continued with the electric mobility products. They ceased these electric bikes, which never really sold all that well in the first place. They mainly sold to disabled people, which is, I suppose, why they decided to make the cycle chair and the Rascal scooter afterwards. Just made more sense. Because really, these were marketed towards RV people, airplane pilots, like general aviation, boats, but it's really just, I think, too heavy to have sold well to those people. It's like 70 pounds, and that's just seems unacceptable for a portable vehicle like this, especially one with, I never even got to the best part here. It has 5 miles of range on the battery it has now. Probably would have had a little bit more with the original battery, 30 amp hour lead acid. But of course, being 12 volt, that's really not very much. So they ended up selling mostly to people who couldn't ride a normal bike, which I suppose is really the only reason you'd want to buy this thing over a moped, because at the time this really wasn't that cheap. It was, I'll put up a picture here. I have the catalog. I don't remember quite how much, but it cost almost exactly the same as a Honda moped of the same era. And if you look at the utility of something like this versus a gas moped, especially back then when you didn't need a license or registration in most areas, all of the benefits of this just kind of dissolve. So the only reason you'd really want one is if you wanted to ride a bike but couldn't, since a moped's not really a bike. This is at least pretty close to a bike. Still not something I'd want to ride for especially far, because all this extra weight with the motor and the battery and fat tires means you need the assist to go up hills. Anyway, then later in the 90s, I think it was Giant Bikes, they came to Michael Flowers and asked him about electric vehicles, since I guess at the time he would have been, or their company would have been, one of the more successful micro-mobility electric vehicle companies. I don't really have any more information than that, other than that they contacted him and asked for advice. So I'm not sure what product that advice would have pertained to, but there you go. I think I have some footage here that I'll throw up of riding this thing, and I have a video of the motor with the cover off, so I'll put that up as well. But I think that pretty much wraps up all the history. If you have any questions about it, I did get some information on this thing. I was able to find a brochure for all the bikes they sold. So just leave any questions in the comments and I'll see if I can answer them. Thanks for watching.